everybody, it's Romania Black, and I'm feeling a little bit like Frieren tonight because it is cold outside, and I'm like, I had to like get some coffee to warm myself up. I was like, it's so cold. But maybe an episode of Frieren Beyond Journey's End will wake us up and warm us up because last episode was really good. I mean, this series has been good from start to finish, right? We're not even halfway. Last episode, we got a sword that has yet to be pulled by a hero. We got lots of vague little references that maybe Stark might become that hero. We also got more Stark. We've gotten so much Stark background. Like, we've gotten background with Frieren, and we kind of know Fern's background because we met her with Hader and everything. But I feel like we've gotten the most backstory with Stark so far, which frames Stark up to be a very important character, and I love him. I love Stark so much. He's such a fun character. He's such a great person. I'm like, Stark is the kind of person I would want to travel with on a journey, and it helps he can swing an axe and kill things. So I would definitely want to be a mage. I would not want to do hand-to-hand combat, no way, but give me a staff, let me fire lasers, I'm here for it. Get me my granny smut and we're ready to go. She's reading all the Eisen and Hader fan fiction. Probably not, because it'd be weird to read fan fiction about your travel, compatriots, but I'm sure she like loans some to Craft or something. I don't know. Speaking of which, we have a comment from Alessi Colley I want to talk about before the reaction, where I didn't put two and two together on this, so I'm really glad that Alessi pointed this out. But Hader in episode 11 was like, oh yeah, it would be really neat if a mage learned how to suppress their mana from when they were a child. If I were a kid, I might do that. And then he does with Fern. And I was like, oh my God, why didn't I put two and two together on that? Yes. So the fact that Fern back in episode 2 can suppress her aura, suppress her mana, is because Hader taught her from a young age to do so. I'm like, I was like, is Fern just naturally like a little prodigy? A prodigy like Frieren seemed to be, but no, it's because she's been taught from an early age. So I like that connection of Frieren and Fern both learning from their masters about this technique from a period of time, and now we're kind of seeing the results that have cultivated of that. Obviously Frieren's like 1,000 years, whereas Fern is like 10 or whatever, but that's still really cool. So I'm glad you pointed that out, Alessi. That's really awesome. And then Craft means strength. Obviously, our strong monk. God, I miss him. He's like, such a great side character. And then Schwer Mountains, like the Schwer Mountains. Schwer literally means difficult or hard. And I'm like, setting up our difficulty settings on the mountains. Deck means blanket. And then I said it was Allburst, but it's Oysterst. Oysterst is the name of it, and it means exceedingly. So nice. So thank you for that translation. I really appreciate it. But yeah, we know now that Stark has an older brother. He has a dad. Both of them could be still alive and Stark not realize it. I kind of want both of them to be alive because I want Stark to kind of show his father that he's not a failure, that he is a hero, and to be able to show his brother that he grew up and is able to take care of himself. Now, whether we see that this season or not, I don't know, but they're framing up the idea that Stark could become the hero that pulls the sword from the stone, even though Himmel could not. Himmel's mind was too in the gutter to pull the sword from the stone. We've been talking about this in the Discord on Patreon, but I feel like, yes, at this point in the series, watching what I've watched so far, I think Fern is kind of in denial that her mind might be in the gutter about Stark. Stark is oblivious. Bless his heart, he has no clue. I think he likes Fern, but he has no clue that she's possibly getting, mind in the gutter moments. He's like, what are we doing? He's been around a dwarf and Sundays all his life. She's the last thing he's worried about. But I feel like Himmel's mind was in the gutter far too much. And Frieren was like, mm-mm. And that's why you can't pull the sword from the stone. But Stark, a pure soul. And plus, maybe that's something else too. We talked about this in discussion last week. If the sword couldn't be pulled from the stone because the calamity wasn't that big of a deal, if Stark pulls it out now, that's not good. Because it's suggesting that even though the Demon King was really strong that they faced 10 years ago or 80 years ago, it wasn't enough to be considered a calamity that was bad enough to warrant the sword being pulled out of the stone. But if Stark pulls it out, then that means there is a threat level that is warranting that, and that's concerning. So we'll just have to wait and see, right? But it's super cold outside, but that's okay. We'll be fine. We've got Frieren to warm us up, so that's what we're going to do. But we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right in and see what we get. I want to give a very quick special shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon, to people who not only support the channel, but also donate a little extra each month, and they get a shout out in the videos, and they get to break the ties if, you know, we ever have any of those in the polls, which could happen. It has happened before. So a special shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Danger Zone, to Destiny Marie, to Eric, to Kiri, to Lyndon, to Matthew Palfiniere, to Sunspots, to Shimoyama, to Trails, to Translucent Men, to Nameless Monster, to Murphew, to Nicholas, to Mateo L. Fidel, as well as Boo Boo and El Freya. Thank you all so much for all of your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So yeah, let's get started on this and see what we get. We're going to start episode 13 of Frieren Beyond Journey's End, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do it to it, Lars. Oh my god. Ah! Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I love Sein. Oh my god. So I was really bummed whenever Kraft left back in episode 11, because I was like, man, it'd be really cool if they had somebody to be like, because here's the thing, I love Stark to pieces, but I do feel bad for him, because it's not the fact that he's traveling with 2 women that's the problem. That's not it. It's the fact that it's Fern and Frieren, and they're both just like, yeah. And he's like, but what do I? He's like, I need somebody to bounce off of, because poor Stark, he's too pure for words. He needs somebody to bear the brunt of frustration, and a corrupt priest is the perfect one for it. I was really sad because I wanted Kraft to be like the 4th person in their team. I was like, yes, get another elf. That way Frieren could, you know, have somebody maybe to like have some interesting conversations about elves with. Frieren does not seem concerned at all about the elves. She's pretty much just like, yeah, they're dying off, whatever. She seems like she could care less. And Kraft, honestly, is just like, yeah, I thought we were all dead, so I guess we're still around. Who knew? So they both seem so not concerned about other elven kind, which makes the seeming elf in the OP that has that's hoarding the smut novels from Frieren all the more intriguing. But I like this because of Sein and like him being the priest. We'll talk about this, and the idea that because he's so corrupt that Frieren can be like, really? And Stark is like, I have somebody else to get flack from. Yay! But we need to talk about this episode. There is so much in this episode that is hilarious. Oh my god. I think that sometimes I can have like a dark and twisted sense of humor, and sometimes like stuff that's really dry I find hilarious. This episode is like the epitome of my humor. I'm just like, yes, absolutely, all of these things. It's just the bait and switch, all of it. It's so good. And when we start out and Sein is just sitting there being like, I wanted to be an adventurer a long time ago, but I kind of gave up. And I'm like, what are we doing? It feels like we just started. It feels like we missed 3 chapters and started right in on this story. But no, that's the gag. The gag is that she found him. And the funny thing is, like, when we start out the story, we start out the episode, you see from like the torso up, you see him talking to her. And then as his story goes, you see less and less of him until finally he's like, hey, you want to help me? And he's sinking in the swamp. And the funny thing is that Frieren's like, I don't know, I gotta think about it. She's such a winch. But then they get back at her with Stark, where the priest is like, I don't know if I can heal him. And I'm like, what? That's hilarious. So let's skip this intro. The thing that's so fascinating to me is, before we talk about Sein and his friend and the theories with that, the thing that's fascinating to me is that Frieren, the episode is called Aversion to One's Own Kind. And you would think that would be directed towards, you know, Kraft, because he's her own kind. He's an elf. But no, that's not how what I like about Frieren is she doesn't really seem to care if you're an elf or a dwarf or whatever. Hers is more like personality types of how she identifies people. And she says that Sein is like her. He's an adventurer he was someone that wanted to be an adventurer, but was filled with all of this regret and was so stuck in the past, and they couldn't move forward. They couldn't savor the present, live in the present, and move forward. They were stuck in that rut in the past. And you can kind of say that Frieren is kind of still that way. She's still kind of stuck in the past because she keeps going back to the heroes of her party and all of that. But she is moving forward at the same time and trying to go see Himmel in the Vale in heaven and to see them and do that. And then they're probably going to see Hader as well. If Eisen dies by the time they get there, I swear I'm going to just like sob, like all of them standing there and be like, no. But for Sein, he said he had a friend who had a lot of adventures. He was foolhardy with energy to spare. And he was always someone that would help. I'm just saying, I'm here for the agenda. You all know this. My shipper goggles are on. I was like, you go get that BL adventure, sir. Go on, Sein, get you some. Be our bisexual king. Do it. I'm here for it. But yeah, I wonder if his friend is dead. And my thoughts were, if he goes with them and finds out that his friend is dead, that he goes to heaven with them. Because right now, he's doing the whole, oh, I'm just going to go part way. I'm not going to go the whole way. I'm just helping you out temporarily till I find my friend. My theory is that the friend is going to be dead. They're going to find out the friend died through the means of a demon or something. One of the sages perhaps killed them. That could be. And then he's going to be compelled to go with Frieren and Fern and Stark to heaven to see his childhood friend. That's what I think is going to happen. Or they're going to meet up with the friend. He's going to die, and then in his dying breath, he's like, oh, go see me again in heaven, and I'll tell you this one thing. And then he dies off, and is like, oh, no. He doesn't get to say what he's going to, and then Sein's like, well, damn it, now I have to come with you to find out what we do with this. So that's what I think is going to happen. I could be wrong. They could meet the friend the next episode. Who knows? But it seems like Sein, he's stuck around because of his brother, because he didn't want to leave because of his brother's sacrifice to stay there. And we'll talk about it here in a little bit. And the one friend tried to convince him to go, but he couldn't. And it feels like his gambling, his alcohol, and his smoking is all tied to these vices that's just getting him by because he's so unhappy there in the village and he's not able to go do his thing. So I'm going to be curious if the gambling, maybe it starts with the gambling less and less, and maybe he stops drinking less and less, and he stops smoking less and less the more he travels with them. I don't know. Hader still drank. Hader was still a corrupt priest that drank. Although Fern is convinced that alcohol is the best medicine. And I'm like, it reminded me of my great-grandmother. She was 99 when she passed, but she grew up during the Great Depression in the 1920s in the U.S. And she was like a very, very prim and proper, very conservative, very old-school, traditional woman. But she had like a thing of whiskey under her cabinet. And I remember when I was like a baby, she was like, oh, you have a toothache. We'll just put some whiskey on that. My parents were like, no. And anytime you got a cold, she was like, I'll make you a hot toddy. And she would just like want to heat up a little thing of whiskey and honey and water and mix it all together and give it to you. My parents were like, because it was just like, cure a cold. If you don't have a lot of money, you can cure a cold with some hot alcohol, and that'll do it. It is not tried and true and tested. I cannot make medical claims of its success rate, but it reminded me of that. Yeah, but this guy that's his friend, his childhood friend, he looks like the stereotypical protagonist, has like the berserk sword. I wonder if that's a reference to Guts, because he kind of has like the spiky hair and like the berserk sword on his back. I wonder if that's a reference to that. Maybe, could be paying homage. That'd be kind of fun if it was. But Sein couldn't take his hand, and it's been 10 years, and I regret it. And Frieren, I like that she's just sitting there like, you're kind of like me. I don't know how I feel about that. She says she doesn't like him. And that made me think, like, does she not like herself? Or she doesn't like that part of herself that didn't move forward, that was stuck in the past? That could be. But I like how she says, I don't like you. So I'm going to keep trying to get you to join our party. She's like, I don't like this side of you. I don't like what you represent because it reminds me of when I was like that. And she's like, so I'm making it my goal to get you to join this party, whether you like it or not. But like, she just sit next to the basket of herbs and he's like, won't you please help me? She's like, I don't know. And then Fern's like, oh my God. And she also says like, but your hand is dirty. And he's like, Is that really the reason you're not going to grab my hand? She's like, this may be the first time encountering a physically dirty adult. She's like, I've been around these guys with their minds in the gutter this whole time, but you're the first one that's actually dirty. Good to know that the men of her party had good hygiene. Good to know. Good to know. Well, you knew Himmel did. Himmel's like, you know that meme where it's the one guy has like 3,000 hair and bathroom products, and the one has like a 40-in-1 bottle of shampoo and conditioner and like everything in one bottle. Eisen's the one with one bottle, and Himmel's the one with everything. And Hader's just borrowing Eisen's stuff. But yeah, I like that Frieren's like, I don't know. And then she's like, I'm trying to remember that spell. And he's like, please hurry as I'm dying. And Fern's like, oh my God, Frieren, really? And she's like, oh yeah, I do remember it. I like that Fern has to go around apologizing for Frieren everywhere they go. She's like, I'm sorry. And not just apologizing for Frieren, but for everyone. It's like, oh, it's fine. She saved me. And Fern's like, I will get onto her later. I love that Fern is like the mom of the group, and Frieren, who is literally this little Yoda walking around, is actually the most mischievous out of the bunch. But see, at the start of this series, I thought Frieren was so cold and emotionless and just kind of bland, but no, our smut reading granny, you just got to get to know her, and then all the layers start to unfurl. It's so good. I love that character work. It's like, because Frieren doesn't change fundamentally as a character, you just kind of get to see more and more of her, and you get to experience her character more the more you're around her. So yes, they make this comment of saying that they don't want to stop at the village. They want to go to the next large town so they can resupply before moving forward with their journey to go to heaven. But of course, Stark gets literally bit by the snake of Eden and gets instantly poisoned. I like these, just like, well, I'm dying. And they make a good point here. So I guess it's good before they trek any further, and they haven't had to luckily deal with demons that deal in poison. Luckily, Lugner and Lottie and Draught were more like just offensive demons. They didn't really have a poison angle to them, because Frieren notes that, you know, identifying poison is a priest spell, and Frieren's like, I'm not very good at that. So now it makes sense why Hader was in the group, because you need a priest that's a healer that knows more than just a mage, that they would be able to do that. That makes more sense, right? So we need somebody that's a priest to be in the party. The monk would have been great because they're strong, but we already have 3 strong characters. We need someone like Sein, who is more of like the healer. And honestly, what I like about this is I'm so used to, in shonen stories, I'm really used to the healer being feminine and the healer being a girl. Now, to be fair, I would be a healer in this world, so I have no point in saying that. But I'm just so used in the stories to your offensive characters being the male characters and the female characters being like the healer sorts, kind of like Orihime in Bleach sort of thing. But here, I like that it kind of subverts it. You have this really hot buff guy, Sein, who's the healer, he's the priest, and then you have Stark, who's the warrior, obviously. But then Fern and Frieren are very capable of taking care of themselves. They do not need help. They've got it. They've figured out, they've cracked the code, they know what to do. So that's really good to note. I like that. But yeah, and so they talk about, you know, using the how much longer can you use your flying magic? And Fern says it consumes a lot of mana, so only about 30 minutes. So that's good to note, that of all things that consume mana the most, it's really flying. And I kind of like that little world building element, because, you know, your obvious solution to them getting to heaven would be like, well, why don't you just fly? But we've established in this world that there can be barriers, like there were in the town. And also, if flying consumes an insane amount of mana, then they're not going to get very far using it. So, and then Frieren's like, well, 30 minutes, we can't fly 30 minutes to town, so we got to go back to that village. And I like that Stark tries to be like, oh, I'm fine. My master could take a lot of potions. He's good. And Frieren's like, yeah, but Eisen was kind of like a freak of nature who could like handle poisons from a dragon. They could knock out a dragon in his back. So he's probably not the best person to compare, you know, notes with. I like that Eisen's just sitting there with arrows. That's the type of humor. Eisen's just like, and he has like 3 arrows in his back. Amazing. Amazing. And I love that poor Hader is appalled by this. That part got me too, where Hader is like, he's just like, you got arrows in your back. Oh my God, my loved one, he's been kebabbed. I'm like, oh, Just give me all of the Hader and Eisen, please. Please. And they're like, yeah, Eisen was far from normal. You are human. We need to go find you a priest. We need a priest. I love that at first, though, the one brother, I'm like, are they joking? Were they being serious? Where he's like, yeah, no, it's too late. We can't save him. And they're like, I can't tell if it was truly a joke or if they were just being the cruelest, because clearly we know now the brother could heal him. He's actually a decent priest, so it's like, oh my God. But Sein is the one with the real talent who should go away and do the things. What it kept reminding me of, and what I wanted to talk about during the reaction, was there's an old movie from the 1940s. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. And the part that relates to this is that there are two brothers. There's Harry and there's George. And George is the elder brother who has all of the dreams and ambitions about traveling and going away. But his family like comes across hard times, and he, as the older brother, has to make a choice. And he makes the choice to stay behind and take care of the family. And then he sends his younger brother away to go, you know, do whatever. And the younger brother ends up becoming a hero. He ends up having all this great stuff happen to him. And then the younger brother comes back and he helps the older brother who stayed behind and sacrificed himself and sacrificed his future during the time to let his younger brother go instead. And it reminded me of this. It's not an accurate comparison, because the brother here stays behind to watch his younger brother, but it's not, to me, I kind of felt like the older brother didn't really want to go to the city. So he kind of was like using the younger brother as an excuse to hate her, being like, oh no, it's really cool that you invited me, but my younger brother's been orphaned. I can't leave him here all alone. Nah, he loves this town too much. I don't want to leave. I'm going to stay here. And I think the reality was that the older brother, not Sein, but his brother, he didn't want to leave. And so he just kind of used the younger brother as an excuse. But the truth of the matter is he didn't want to leave his hometown. And that's why he gets so pissed, because he realizes, oh my God, my younger brother thought that I was staying here for his behalf, so he didn't want to leave. And he's like, no, Baka. He's like, I wanted to stay here. I just used you as an excuse. No, you get out of here. Go do your thing. I'll be fine. Like, that's why he slapped him. And I thought that was really, really well done. Right? And then I like that Sein just touches him for 2 seconds and heals him. So then, yeah, he comes in with the small scythe, and he's like, don't you think this tub is kind of small? And the brother's like, well, there's honor in poverty. And he's like, well, isn't this going too far? We're the only ones who are impoverishing ourselves down to a hand-sized tub. And then I like just that humor, like, oh, our bathtub is now this big because we're you know, trying to be pious. And then when he comes back, he's like, but the scythe is so small. It's so stupid, and I love it. I think it's this, and the thing of it is, it's played completely straight. It's played completely deadpan. Like, they don't draw attention to how stupid it is at all, and that is the best part of it. It's so clever and funny. I love it. But he heals Stark, and he's like, now we're even. You saved me, I saved you. And that's it. And Frieren's like, But I like the fact that Hader came there. Hader gave them the amulet there, the little, the necklace. And Hader was the one trying to convince him to let the brother go, or to try to get the older brother to come to the capital. Nice. I love it. It's the only thing I can be proud of, but my ability doesn't compare to Sein's. And as soon as he said that their parents passed away and he was an orphan, I'm like, oh, well, he's joining the party. We established that all the party members are orphans, so he has to join. There's no other way. And plus, he looks so cute as a kid. He was the cutest little kid. Sein is green-eyed, brownish red hair. I mean, Sein he's checking off boxes. I approve of Sein. And he has that little bit of bad boy to him. I'm like, a bad boy priest? Sign me up. I'm here for it. All right, let's go. I love it. And so then Frieren's like, okay, he doesn't want to leave, and she thinks that his story kind of compares to them. I like that Fern's just eating the loaf of bread as they convene to think about it. And I like that Stark's like, look, I want a priest to come with us because I would like my brains to not flow out my nose. Stark's like, I just had a taste of death and I'd like to not experience that again. So let's get a priest, please. And of course, Fern's pious and she was raised by Hader, so she's all on board with this idea. And Frieren's like, I don't know. He doesn't want to go, but he should go. I like that Frieren's like, I don't know. Frieren can be such a diva. Like when she's in the bed and she's like, meh. She's like, I don't know. I don't want to do it. Like she just gives some really good expressions in this episode that are so funny. I absolutely love it. So Stark goes downstairs to try to convince Hader to come. They're gambling and they end up playing strip poker. I like that Stark is like, oh, you smoke and you gamble and you drink. Isn't that a bit too corrupt? Stark is so pure. He's too pure for words. I love it because if you looked at Stark if Stark was on the cover of like a manga with the Frieren characters, you'd probably think because of the red hair and the axe that he'd be like a delinquent character and kind of like a Bakugo from My Hero Academia, who ironically is the one voicing Himmel. But no, he's like the most precious being. And I love him. So he's so pure. He's the summer lamb. And it's just great. So he ends up getting conned into playing poker and losing horribly. I just love when Fern's sitting there reading her Smut Junior. And Frieren has like the little like number 3 face where she's like, meh. She's so happy. It's adorable. I love Frieren being so content in this moment. And then Fern and them go out and find poor Stark. Like, what I like about this scene, too, is that Fern does not get mad at Stark. She blames Sein. She, like, puts a little coat on him, and he's like, thank you. And she's like, whoever did this to Stark, whoever mistreated him. And I was like, oh, girl, I love Fern being protective of him. It's great. But Frieren's like, you want to become an adventurer, don't you? And he's like, no, I'm just a loser. And then Frieren compares herself to him. And Himmel's like, it's fine. I'm talking about the present, not about the past. And that little montage where Himmel's face becomes hers, superimposed, it's so good. I love Frieren's like, look, I'm like you were in the past, but you need to move forward like I am. Just come on. And she's like, that told me everything I need to know. I don't like you, Sein. And so I've decided you'll join us no matter what, because you need to stop being in this rut. And then Fern goes and gets all their clothes and everything and is like, she hands them to Stark, but she's like trying to be like, I don't want to touch your belongings because, gutter mind. And then she just tosses the stuff at Sein. So then they become like, the evangelicals going house to house to try to convince Sein to join. They're like, sir, have you considered becoming an adventurer? And it's super cute. I love the montage of them just trying again and again to get him to join during the festival and afterwards. It's really, really cute. They keep playing poker. They keep losing. Fern looks like she's going to like just push him up against a wall. I love the shot of Frieren like amongst all the guys where she's like, have you read Yowie? like amongst all the guys there. She's like, she just looks like, she looks like somebody on Twitter that is introducing a bunch of summer children to the world of BL. She's like, have you ever seen Fake? Let me show you. Just like pulls out her grimoire. I just freaking love it. While Fern's in the background eating berries. It is absolutely hilarious. And then, yep, we see the guy that kind of looks like Frieren's version of Guts standing there that tried to get him to go, and he thinks that he's probably dead at this point. So, yeah, then the brother says that Sein likes older women. And I like that Stark and Fern just kind of look over to Frieren like, you're the oldest woman we know. I do think, what I do like about this is that Sein is not seduced by Frieren. No, not like Himmel. No. Sein is not seduced by Frieren because she doesn't look older. She looks like a kid. And some of her like mischievousness that she has as an old lady kind of comes across as childish. So he's like, no. So I'm just waiting for Sein to meet his mature older woman that he's like, that's the lady I'm after. And I'm like, look, Sein, I'm probably older than you are. I'm happy to fit the bill if you need me to. But I love that she like is going to seduce him, and she's just like, I'll do it. I'm an elf and I'm far older than you. And he's like, and she's like, you've left me no choice. I love that Frieren tries to use the smolder on Sein. She tries to use it. it just fails miserably where she's like, smooch. The problem is, Himmel was instantly knocked out by it. Like, Himmel was just unconscious, Sanji style from One Piece, just absolutely destroyed. And Stark and Fern are like, it was too much sexiness. And she's like, what? I love that Isen's like, you are a wicked woman. How dare you? And Hader's like, Himmel's dying. And Himmel's like, love it. Oh my God. I cannot. I am absolutely blown away by how hilarious this episode is. And then Frieren says, well, you wanted to go back to your friend and go after them. If he's dead, then let's find out. I was waiting for her to tell him about heaven and going to see him, but I feel like that's going to come if we find out if he's actually dead or not. I feel like we have to find out first if the best friend is dead, or if the best friend is still alive, then I don't think it's going to be mentioned seeing them in heaven, but it could go a number of different ways. They could either find the friend and it's this great reunion, which I think is the least likely option. They could find the friend and something bad's happened to him, or he's turned over this leaf and become really jaded, possibly. They could find the friend and he's like helping out a village or something and he ends up dying, or they could find out that he's already died. Or they may never find him. There's a lot of options as to what could happen, right? There's a lot of options as to what could happen. And I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of Berserk spoilers, just a hot second, since the one friend kind of feels like Guts. In Berserk, your main characters are Guts and Griffith, and I'm not crazy far into the manga, so apologies. But in the manga, early on, Guts decides to leave to go basically become an adventurer, for better or worse. And he leaves his friend Griffith, and Griffith kind of spirals and, just can't settle with the fact that Guts left him. And he just kind of spirals from there. That's kind of like what happens here a teensy bit. Except in Berserk, Griffith is not satisfied with the narrative of him being left behind by Guts and what his life is like being left behind. He can't stand that. And so he does everything to actively not have that happen. Whereas Sein here seems to have resigned themselves to the dream sequence that we see in Berserk, where, it's just like the settling down sequence. Sein has seemingly resigned themselves to that until Frieren comes and like plucks him out and takes him with them. So, end of Berserk spoilers. That reminded me of that kind of dynamic and how similar but different it is. I thought that was really interesting. And so then, yeah, I like that. Also, little baby Sein looks adorable. I like that Sein has to say that his brother's never hit him before. He's like, my brother slapped me, but he's never done that before. So sorry you all had to see that. And the brother's like, we are not the same. He's like, I was content staying here in the village. This is what I want to do. I don't want to go to the capital. I used you as an example. I don't want to go. You can leave. And it's fine. I'll be okay. It's almost like the older brother is mad because he's like, you make me feel like I've held you back all these years. If I'd known that's what you thought, I would have sent you away a long time ago. Love that. I also love, okay, so there's a couple things. The scene that happens right after that where Stark and Fern are fishing. Adorable. I love that Stark catches the little fish and he's like, I caught a fish. And Fern's like, all right, cool. Self-sustainability. Great. I love that Sein comes up to Frieren and tells her this whole thing about don't get the wrong idea about my brother. He's really kind and he never once hit me before. And he's like, but I made him hit me this time. I've never seen him with that expression. Like, he goes on about wanting to become an adventurer and like agrees to it. And Frieren looks over and she's like, that's nice. Can you let me read my smut now? Go away. It's so funny thinking of Frieren as this granny reading the most salacious, like X-rated pornographic material and imagining that every time you see her with a grimoire in all these scenarios. It's like somebody that's looking at not safe for work posts at work during a meeting. I'm not saying I've done that before, but it happens sometimes. That is just so funny. I love just the imagining of that. And Sein's like, fine, I can go look for him. I'll find him, make my stupid childhood dream come true. Let's go do that. Fine. And see where he is. I'm just going part way. It's like, all right. And then they take off and the brother is happy that Sein is leaving and going on his way. And Frieren says they're headed to heaven. And he's like, oh, well, we all go there when we die. And it's like, literally. And that's when Fern's like, even you, Mr. Sein, you're going? And he's like, wow, that was brutal. I feel like she's like, oh, you're going to heaven too? And he's like, damn. Just cut straight to the core of me, Baxter. And Stark's like, welcome to the club. We have jackets. Good luck to us both. Oh, this episode was so good. Oh my gosh. I loved this episode. I love Sein. I love his character being introduced. I love that he's joined the party. It's great to have a balance of 2 guys and 2 girls. It's nice. I feel like the good thing is they're all kind of foils to each other in interesting ways, and they're all similar to one another in interesting ways. So that's kind of cool. And again, we talked about if we have like our Punnett square of familiarity, you have Stark, who is like Eisen and Himmel. You have Fern, who is like Frieren and Hader. You have now Sein, who's kind of like Hader, but also Frieren. And then Frieren, who's taking on Himmel. And so that's kind of really cool. I like that we have this, like, I don't have Whiteboard Kun with me this week, but we may have to bring Whiteboard Kun out to see, like, how they all connect to one another and the old party versus the new. But that's so cool. I love it. Yes. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I thought this episode was fantastic. I loved it. And I'm excited to hear your comments down below. But next week is episode 14. We'll be at the halfway point next week, which is super exciting. So, in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, we'll be back with more Frieren Beyond Journey's End next week. Bye!